All right, welcome everybody to the very first meeting of the Comprehensive Long Range Plan Committee. As this is the first meeting, I will be kicking it off in leadership until the group is able to get a chair and situate itself, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Before I get going and have everybody introduce themselves with a roll call that we'll also use as an introduction for time's sake, I do need to read the pursuant to the Governor's June 16, 2021 Act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Paragraph 20, the Comprehensive Long Range Plan Committee will be using remote participation for this meeting. The audio of this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the town's webpage within 24 hours in accordance with keeping the public informed of actions during this meeting. I would ask that all participants remotely attending this meeting please state your name for identification purposes each time you speak throughout the meeting. At this time, a roll call attendance will be taken. And again, as I sent in an email earlier, we'll use this opportunity. I'll read the name and the group that you are representing. If you want to just say present, and then also take 30 or less seconds to just kind of give an introduction to the group. That will help us kick off. So Karen Apuzzo-Langton from the Planning Board.
Karen Apuzzo-Langton, present. Yes, I am representing the Planning Board. 30 seconds. I've been in town for 20 years. In my professional life, I am an educator. I teach economics. I've been on the planning board now for 3 years in this term, and I had 2 years in an appointed term. I'm very fond of Holliston. I like to, in my spare time, cycle and hike. In the pandemic, my goal was to hit every trail in the open space properties of Holliston, and I have to say that I was successful and did that. And I know what you're asking, what is my favorite? So it is the Poitras property underneath all the pine trees. And now that you can access it from Washington Street after, I believe, was it the Scouts took up the bridge responsibility in rebuilding it, it's quite beautiful. I encourage you all to get out there. Nice to meet you.
It was a very efficient use of time. Ben Sparrow, Select Board.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ben Sparrow, Vice Chair of the Select Board. I'm excited to be here. I think this is something we need to look at our laws to make sure that they reflect our values in town. And I'm very excited to do this. And I've been in town for a long time, and my family's been in town for a very long time. So I'm excited about this. So thank you.
You, Brian Clancy from the Housing Trust.
Present. Nice to see everybody. I've been in town since 1989. Grew up in Natick. I'm president of the Holliston Housing Trust, also president of Habitat for Humanity Metro West Greater Worcester, which I'm in my 3rd term as president in that regard. In my private life, I am a private equity investor in real estate. I've got 3 kids here in Holliston and very fond of the community. I've always given back a lot, so I'm happy to participate.
Thank you. Bob Malone, Council on Aging.
Hello, friends. My name is Bob Malone. I've been a resident in Holliston for 32 years and change. I'm a retired college, university, and not-for-profit organization administrator. I currently serve on the Council on Aging and have been on there, seems like my entire life, probably 15 years. I also serve on the Library Trustees and the Housing Authority, and have done some other volunteer work in town. And I also work as an unpaid consultant to the Episcopal Diocese of Massachusetts. And senior issues are one of my passions.
Thanks, Bob. Sue Nersessian, representing the Finance Committee. Oh, you're muted, Sue.
Sorry about that. I'm Sue Nersessian. I've been in town since 2005, and I have 2 kids who went through the school system through middle school. I just completed 2 terms on the Finance Committee and now have my Tuesday nights free, and I'm very excited to participate in this, so I'm really glad to join this group.
Thank you. Frank Chamberlain from the Historical Commission, I believe, said he was going to be running in from work, so we'll give him, I'll put him on hold for a moment. Lixie Carey from the Open Space. I'll give her a second as well. Rich Rosenberry representing Sustainability.
Hi, Rich Rosenberry. I've probably been here less in Holliston than anybody. I didn't move here till 2012, but I've been active with our sustainability initiative since then, and before that in other places.
Thank you, Rich. Anne-Marie Pilch from the Concom.
Hi, I am a member of the, I've been a member of the Concom since 2004, and I'm also a member of the Open Space Committee, which I've been on since it began in 1999, I believe. I've been a Holliston resident since 1985. I've been retired for the past 2 years, but my professional background is in environmental and horticultural education.
Great. Thank you. Stephen Biglow, Parks Commission.
Hi, everyone. Steve Biglow, Parks Commission. I'm also a high school English teacher at Millis High School. I have 2 kids, 11 and 8, and looking forward to being a part of the group, helping us stay focused, efficient, and always with solution-based ideas. So, hi.
Great. Thank you. Ken Henderson, Rail Trail Committee.
Present. Ken Henderson. My growing up family moved in 1963 to Holliston, married, and now I'm still a resident as we speak. And been involved in lots of different parts of town. Used to work with the park department, ran the town beaches back in the 70s, another chapter of my life. I'm a retired public school and college supervisor. I'm presently very involved with the rail trail the last 7 years. I did a stint with the food pantry, so volunteering is a nice part of my way of expressing retirement, but also being pretty active. We do an awful lot of the maintenance along the rail trail, so I'm interested in any of the outbound sort of parts of this whole project. And just a footnote, I'm on vacation in Ogunquit, so I've been allotted 1 hour. So if I happen to click off, it's to keep the peace.
Very good. And before I move down to the next one, I did see that Frank Chamberlain hopped on. Frank, if you want to take a minute to say present so I can record you and also just introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, Frank Chamberlain, present. I'm the, the designee from the Historical Commission. So.
Great. Thank you. I did hear from Matt Lavinsky Wednesday nights when we do get into scheduling the next meeting is not good for Matt. He's in a master's program, Youth and Family Services. If the group decides the Wednesday night, they'll need to replace him. But I told him we would see where it goes before that change is necessary. So Matt is not with us tonight. Stacey Raffi from the school committee.
Good evening, present. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. I said to Ben Sparrow earlier and to Travis, I have been waiting for this moment for 5 years. This is something that I am passionate about and excited for. So I am looking forward to working with all of you. In my former life, I was an event manager, and then I had my first child and became a stay-at-home mom. I'm also a former professional figure skater, and the beach is one of my favorite places in the universe. So it's nice to see you all.
Great, thank you very much. Josh Mann, I also heard from, is not going to be with us tonight, but he's very excited about the group. He'll be representing the Board of Health. He just had a last-minute issue come up, but other than that, is very excited and wanted to express that to you all. Glenn Brown for the Economic Development Committee, of which we just left from the 6:30 meeting earlier.
Hi, yes, present. Actually, Rich, I have you beat. I moved to Holliston in 2018, so I might be the newest person here in town. Moved from Ashland, though. We bought a house. My wife and I bought a house in 2011 there, and always wanted to come to Holliston. When we decided that we're going to move my parents in with us, aging parents, we found a residency here that accommodated all that. So it's been a great situation for us with the senior center and them getting involved. We have two daughters. Our oldest just graduated Placentino, going into Miller, and our youngest starts kindergarten next year. So obviously long-term planning, looking forward to it because I am a financial planner. I do run a small business that I started in 2018, a registered investment advisory firm.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Nancy Barron from the Library Trustees. Oh, Nancy, you're muted.
Okay, I think I did it.
You are.
Without in-home tech support. I've been serving on the library board for something like 20 years. I don't know exactly. Moved to Holliston in 1995. We raised our children here. Love the town. Love the rail trail. And I'm going on vacation tomorrow morning, and I haven't packed yet.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, so at the moment, the way that, and I'll get into right now, the charge of the committee, I'm going to pull it up on screen, so we'll go blank for a second here. But one of the items that we'll notice is that the way that the article was passed at the May town meeting to set up this group, that there's actually, we just read through 16 people, 14 of which are here. There is a 17th seat designed through the article that was passed, which is related to DPW. There is no DPW current board that would naturally seat somebody here, and we can certainly discuss that as we get down to committee organization later. So with that, let me just pull up here. Number 2 on our agenda is review the charge of the committee, Envisioning Future Holliston. So just so you're all aware, I think I've sent this to you previously, but we are on the webpage. This is Boards and Committees, Long Range Planning. We couldn't get comprehensive long range planning on there, so you have to go to L for long range. This is the page that you come to. It actually includes the article, which I'll just skim through more than anything. And then also, obviously, all the seats that we talked about here. Anybody who would like an email link to this, if you have a town email specifically, most likely, we can certainly make that progress of that as well in case people are starting to reach out to you based on your service area. So the Comprehensive Long Range Plan Committee will develop Envisioning Future Holliston, a vision statement, as phase 1 of a comprehensive long-range plan that will guide government and other local actions for the next 10 to 15 years and will protect Holliston's assets and character, enhance its quality of life, and balance town needs with the ability to pay. The CLRPC, which I've been calling Clerpica, but I think we may need the Clerp Committee or something to that effect, however you all want to call yourselves, would release the Envisioning Future Holliston report 1 month prior to the annual town meeting in 2022. So that would put this, a report coming from this group by April of 2022. At that town meeting would present a proposal for funding to develop the full comprehensive plan to implement the vision. So I won't read the rest here. As I mentioned previously, we'll talk later about the public works seat. But with that, before I move on from here, we do have the petitioner of the article with us, Mary Greendale. So I would take this opportunity under review the charge of the committee Envisioning Future Holliston to see if anybody has questions about what you've been tasked with and potentially, if it makes sense, to direct those to the petitioner, Mary Greendale. Because we have such a large group, if you raise your hand, I can see everybody at the moment, but there's also a raise hand function. Does anybody have any questions on the charge? I see nothing. Mary, is there anything you'd like to add to the charge? Mary is shaking her head. Okay. With that, I will pull up. Did I hear? No. Okay. With that, I will move then to number 3, which is review the 1997 vision statement. I thought this would be a good icebreaker for the group to kind of look at what we have. That was sent out previously. And, you know, I think at some point, sometimes people might pull punches. Some people might be more aggressive in terms of, but I think at this point, you know, stating what we think and what might be the shortcomings or what might not be stated or what can be improved, we're going to have to do over time. So I don't think anybody should be shy about doing it now. Let me pull that up right now. so that anybody watching can see. And I will, I don't know if somebody watching live on HCAT at the moment would see this, but if you are watching it after the fact, I believe HCAT will use the Zoom to get this up so that somebody watching when it's posted again will see it. So I will read this because I think it's kind of the biggest thing to get going tonight. And so with that, I will start the community vision statement. And let me just go to the bottom here. This is from Beals and Thomas, June 30, 1997. The town of Holliston envisions itself as a progressive yet traditional New England community with neighborly citizens from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds who care about Holliston and whose active involvement in town ensures that Holliston will always be a highly desirable place to live and work. A historic downtown with viable shops and public buildings, services and parks within comfortable walking distance, and plentiful open spaces, wooded areas, and recreational areas linked with easily accessible walking and biking trails. The town of Holliston proactively manages its growth through a continuous and comprehensive planning approach, which is supported by the actions of public officials, volunteer organizations, and citizens who demonstrate their commitment to the planning process on a regular basis. The town of Holliston proudly supports its public school system that provides a superior education in state-of-the-art facilities and that is recognized nationwide for its excellence. The town of Holliston offers residents and businesses a high level of cost-effective services operating from well-maintained public facilities. Town employees who want to live in town can afford to do so. The town of Holliston treasures its natural environment and it is especially proud of the degree to which it has protected its high-quality water resources. The town of Holliston provides a safe and healthy environment where families spanning many generations continue to choose to live and raise their children. The town of Holliston's tree-lined country roads can be traversed in safety to the greatest extent possible by pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. The town of Holliston entices sustainable businesses in tune with Holliston's community character to relocate and remain in Holliston and to contribute tax revenues to create and maintain a balanced tax base. The town of Holliston is managed by fiscally responsible government comprised of decision makers who are responsible to the needs of Holliston's residents. This I would also be happy to put on our website, but that is essentially what I think we may want to kick off with. I do see a hand raised, and that is Mary Greendale, if you'd like to start.
I really just want to give you a fun fact, and that is that it was Robert Weidnick who was actually the one who represented Beals and Thomas in getting us through this whole vision process in the late 90s when he was just starting to work on the rail trail. That's it.
And I think, I would say, obviously, Robert and Ken worked together on the rail committee. And so Robert has been involved to date. Actually, I was working with him yesterday to actually begin to upload all those documents that were in the Excel file I also sent to everybody. Which is another thing that we'll talk about soon. But that is, so Mary was giving some background on how we came to be. But 1997 is, well, for me, it feels not that long ago, but in reality, we're getting up there in terms of master planning and vision statements. So is there anybody who would like to kick off with a review? Any evident, okay, actually, sorry, I'm sorry. I see multiple hands. Ben and then Sue.
I think actually Sue had her hand up before me, but that doesn't matter.
No, that's okay, Ben. Go ahead.
Okay. I think the thing that I notice about this is I think, it's certainly, it's supposed to be broad and things like that. But I think the thing that I feel is missing when I look at this is I'd like to see a little bit more when it comes to sustainability, environmentalism, and sort of like how we, what kinds of, some of that value of that sort of thing. I mean, obviously we talk about things like carbon neutrality and things like that. And you don't want to be that specific here, but I think we do need to have more that, some of the decisions we make are with the goal of having a sustainable, environmentally friendly kind of community as much as possible. I think that personally, that's something that I think is important. And I wish we had a little bit more about parks. And, obviously the rail trail's not here because it wasn't really there, but I think that's a treasure that I really would love to see emphasized. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue?
Yeah, I actually, before we dive in more on the details, I actually was hoping to get a little bit more background around sort of the genesis of what you just read through, Travis. And it looked like it wasn't presented from the town, it was presented by a third party. And so I was just wondering, was it just one person that came up with that along with the third party? And then how has it been used since 1997? Like, has it been tied into any of our strategic initiatives? And if so, sort of how? Just so we can sort of think about that as we move forward and what may have worked and not worked.
Sure. I'm going to have to rely on Mary Greendale to go a little bit more into the history there.
Okay. Beals and Thomas was contracted by the town. So we went through the same process, that you do for any other contract, went through town meeting and said, shall we do a master plan? And this was phase one of the master plan. And eventually there was a master plan, but in that case, Beals and Thomas didn't get the contract because it was an open bid, and they weren't the lower bidder or lowest bidder. So the master plan then was done by John Brown. As a result of that, I always had the feeling that the work that we had done, and let me assure you that we did a lot of outreach. I think today we can probably accomplish a lot more outreach because of technology. But, I vividly remember sitting in meetings and so forth with, 20, 30 people at a time, talking about, going through the exercises that they had us going through. So it was very broad in terms of how we got there, what we got. But I do think that there was a disconnect because the person or people who ultimately did the master plan didn't do the vision. And therefore, there was not the sort of, I don't think he had the same, John Brown didn't have the same attachment to the original vision piece. So the master plan has been made available to you, I'm assuming. I know it's on the website and it's been scanned and everything. How much has it been used? In my view, there are some things, certainly, for instance, the open space. We had a goal for hoping to reach 25%, and we've certainly worked toward that and done a darn good job on that one. So in some places it's been implemented, and others it hasn't, but I think that's part of what this committee will have the opportunity to do, is to look at what worked and what didn't work.
And was the original sort of sponsors the select board, or was it multiple groups in town?
This was through the planning board.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a master plan really done by the, brought up through the planning board. And you also have to remember that we had a little more undeveloped land there than we do now. And so the land use issues were a lot more demanding than they are today. I mean, I think we've all sort of shrugged and recognized we don't have a whole lot of options left with open space, open land. But back then we were still worrying about, where was the industrial land and how did it all fit in with neighborhoods and stuff.
Thank you. Thanks, Travis.
And so I think too, Mary, if you want to, I think you kind of touched on it there, but the idea, I think that you led off with was, there needs to be a significant connection between your vision and your master plan, right? And so the way that this, when I read off the way that the article was written, setting up this group, phase one is the vision, and then leading that into sort of the next progression, right? But along the way, I think one of the things that we'll look at probably under itemized goals and objectives down here is sort of how we're going to go about that as a group, how you all want to get feedback from the community. Certainly, we have access to a variety of ways in which we can survey the community. We have surveys that have been done that you can all look at. For example, I have one open right now, specific to one property of 260 Woodland that we've received 500 responses to already. But also, the rec department did a survey. The library has done a survey. We have all of these different things that you can look at and kind of determine what you have access to make decisions. And then, if we have holes to fill, go about that. And I think there's people who are able to help the group, and then the group can also be involved as much as possible. Pat Boyd is here as well, somebody who's sort of volunteered to support the group, and we can talk about that. But Mary, do you have your hand up new?
No, I'm just leaning on it.
All right. The hand function is, Oh, and now, so just getting back to the review of that vision statement, Bob.
I was just to make a parochial comment about my particular representation is that there's no mention in that 24-year-old document about an age-friendly community or senior issues. And that's somewhat understandable because in the past 24 years, senior issues have come more to the fore for us to be concerned about with aging populations and so forth. And Massachusetts is encouraging the development of age-friendly communities, which would make them more welcoming and livable for older residents. So I hope that's one element that we will keep in mind as we formulate our discussions for the future.
Great. Yeah, so is there anybody else that's, Ben's thoughts on sustainability, environmentalism, and parks not specifically being mentioned. Sue's question on, how this vision came to be, to give you all some background on it, and Bob feeling the age-friendly nature was not really highlighted here. Does anybody else have any sort of initial feedback on, oh, I see Ken, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Being somewhat familiar with mission/vision statements, once it is pulled together into a formal statement, is it going to be used as more of a yardstick to see how close we come to actually the mission statement descriptors and we'll call them goals? Or is it more to try and describe where we are now and where we'd like to go in the future? Because a lot of times mission statements are a way to hold up a mirror to ourselves, whether it be a committee or the whole town, and say, okay, here's what we aspire to be. How close are we? So I was just wondering if this mission statement, vision statement position we're going to be amending, will it be then our yardstick for assessing how well we're doing in the various categories of what it's going to cover? So I don't know whether it's something we already assume, or is it something we need to more or less state collectively that it is going to be used, for instance, as our yardstick of progress as a town in the various ways we'd like to see ourselves improve? Or is it simply a reflection of where we are at the moment? So maybe that'd be good to, unless it already is implicit in what we have already in front of us, perhaps just the idea of how is it going to be used so we can really see it as a tool rather than just as a very nice, probably accurate statement of what the town's nature is. So do you think we ought to try to clarify that a little bit, or is it presumed it already has been?
No, I think, you got to look at it. And I think it's the question, right, is for this group to talk about as well as it goes about getting to the vision statement of how it should be implemented and how it should impact the master plan and anything else. But if you think about both of the examples that came up from Ben on sustainability and environmentalism, right, we have a number of ways that towns measure themselves on those items when they make it a priority, right? And so, certainly by having a vision statement, you then can tie metrics to measure yourself depending on how much of a priority is for a community. The same thing for Bob's point that issues related to being an age-friendly community, there are metrics now in which we can benchmark ourselves. So again, you start with the vision statement, but there are ways that we can be measuring them, especially for the priorities. Brian Clancy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, so I've done a number of different strategic plans, and I think that when we're coming up with the objectives, the strategic plan is just that. It's a plan. It states our values, and then the real work happens from that plan. It won't necessarily be in the plan about the actual items with respect to the individual groups. So, for instance, if you state that you want a diverse housing stock and affordable housing within our town, as a goal or a value, you wouldn't list 25 different ways in the plan of how to do that, but you would charge a committee to take that value forward and try to implement it as part of its goals. And then you can go back to that value and measure against whatever that committee has done or department has done in order to see how you've done. So I do think you can use it as a measuring stick, and it's not necessarily a stagnant document either. I think that, most of the strategic plans that I've done are kind of 3 to 5 year plans. I haven't done a lot with, major municipality work in that respect. So I don't know if the range is longer for these kinds of things, and if you have to address them more frequently. I don't know the answer to that, but I think you'll get bogged down in the actionable items to accomplish the goals if you focus too much on that rather than what the goals and the values are in the plan.
I saw Steve's hand go up and down, so let's go to Karen and see if, no, okay.
I don't know. I don't know really if I'm making a statement or asking a question. So I know that I'm sitting here with a group of very diligent, interested, focused people. So maybe you could help me with this. I've read through the 1999 master plan a lot. And from my role on the planning board, when we entertain special permits, right? Because a regular permit is a by right, so we don't spend a lot of time talking about that. But all we have is a grounded situation in bylaws. So I'm always thinking back to, well, what is that narrative of how we see the town? And how do our residents see the town? And I'm hoping that by looking back at this older plan, which clearly does talk about this town being rooted in open space and agriculture, and, it sounds like a quaint New England town. I'm hoping that when we have this narrative, we also provide opportunity for boards to have a grounding mechanism that provides, if you will, the rudder for the boat, not just the bylaws, because the bylaws can be interpreted many different ways. But I think we need something that across government, we all agree upon of where we're going. And I'm hoping that that's what we do. Like, I'm looking for a spot on the horizon, not necessarily the path that we take to get there, but a spot on the horizon to aim for. And maybe Mary can help me with that. I'm not sure, but that's like really that's what I thought we would be doing. And then when I go back through that plan and I look, there is some things that are very, very specific in that plan that at this date are very outdated. So whoever said 5 years, probably I'm thinking that as well, because 10 years is an eternity with technology these days. But like I said, I don't know if it was a question, a comment, or just a statement.
Great. I'm getting told that the hand isn't up, but Stacey Raffi has her hand up metaphorically. And then I think part of what Karen put out was to Mary, so we'll get to that. Go ahead, Stacey.
Well, I was going to say, Mary, do you want to jump in? Because I'm on the same wavelength with Karen, that I too, part of what I have been sort of asking for and talking about is some sort of, whatever we're going to call it, plan, vision, whatever, what have you, is that point on the horizon, so that when we're planning and when we're in the budget season, we're all looking at the same thing, because we're all sharing the same pie, and that pie is what it is. And so I think we need more guidance, strategic plan, whatever you want to call it. Mary and I have talked about this a little bit too. So I agree, Karen, I'm with you there. That's what I'm sort of envisioning as part of this group's work.
Okay, let me try this. Let's, for the moment, if we had hired a consultant, that person would be walking us through a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. And the first step to that process is identifying where you want to end up. What do you want this town to look like, be like, function like? And we'll use 5 years for now. I think you can look at a 5 to 8 year kind of time range. I agree that technology moves things so quickly that going beyond that is like too long. But there are processes that are available to us, and the one that I happen to like is from it's the National Planning Association, American Planning Association, and I even contacted the person who wrote the book, literally, on how to do these. They're basically sustainable standards, and there is a whole process by which we can do that. And in fact, the way I wrote this whole thing is to make sure that, that was an opportunity. But no matter how we go, no matter what process we go through, we need to remember that there are two different things. A vision is not a plan. A vision is not a plan, all right? A vision is like, where do I want to go on vacation? Well, I want it to be warm. I want a beach. I want it to be historical. That's kind of like what you're envisioning. You know what you want, and then eventually you're going to have to make some decisions. This is supposed to be no holds barred, okay? So let's make believe that and probably because of my age, but I'll go along with Bob and say, okay, I still would like to find some affordable, quote unquote, housing downtown. I think that the seniors are being neglected. So my future is I want to be able to see that a lot of seniors have access to the downtown and can walk to places, and they can, so forth. It's a senior-friendly community. I want it to be a senior-friendly community. And Rich might say, well, I want it to be an environmentally sustainable community. Okay, that's a vision. That's not talking about a program or anything that you can measure, not yet. So it's really that picture. And then when you're sitting there, obviously bylaws are going to have to track. And what I would apologize to anybody who's ever been on the planning board, there were many, many things that we were supposed to have done with the economic development plan that would have made life 1,000 times easier that we never did. So in writing this, proposing this committee, it was always with the idea that this committee would be a permanent committee to keep track of and follow and make sure that we go back and we make sure that everybody's buying in and using it as a tool. And if it's not working, then you'll have the opportunity to adjust it. But for right now, it's merely kind of letting go of the things that normally confine us, because normally we start at the bottom, which is the bottom line. Do we have the money to do this? No matter what the it is. It's the other way around for now. For just now, because we all know that we're going to throw some ideas out because it's not going to be attainable. But right now, it's just, what do you want the community to be like? Do you want it to be like Sherburne? Do you want it to be like Natick? Do you want a denser population in the downtown? Do you want to see apartments so that you can get that denser population? It really is about how big do you want it to be? So all those kinds of they're almost amorphous, but they're not amorphous when you start to think about them. Does that help at all? Karen, how about you? Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. I think when, like you say, right? Some of us on the committee are going to, as you say, be more bottom up, and some of us are going to be more top down, right? I'm a very, very big picture person, and then I go back and I fill things in. So I when you say senior friendly, I think kid friendly, family friendly, like we should, like I think everybody wants it all. I mean, I would imagine everybody on this committee wants all of that. So I guess my question specifically is, when the last plan was written, there were like 14,000 some odd people living in town. How many people live in town today?
Just a little bit more. It's closer to 15, but that's it. It's not a lot more. What we've done is we've spread people out, and families are much smaller. We used to be a town with, you know, and this is true across the country, you know, 4 and 5 kids rather than 1 or 2. So that's different. So it's just that the profile or the demographics have changed for sure. But the numbers of people haven't changed that much. And you could say that was true for decades. I mean, we were 12,000. The big jump happened like in the 60s, you know, where we went from 3 to 5 to 8, and then just did a huge jump to 12. And then we just, for 1 decade, we didn't move.
All right, let me just, we got a few hands up, but I saw Matt Pavinsky come in. As I mentioned, Wednesday nights are not good for him when we get later on and we start planning future meetings. But if you want to just take a second to say present and introduce yourself, Matt, that'd be great.
Great, yeah, I'm Matt Lavinsky, present. Been in town for 21 years, live over near the Willowgate Rise, and excited to be a part of the committee.
Great, thank you. All right, so Ken, your hand has been up for a while. Is that a new comment that you have? No? Okay, Brian's hand up. Is that a new comment, Brian? Yes, go ahead.
My question for the group is, you know, we have a lot of people on this committee, and do we need to have a facilitator that's a professional in leading a group like this through a process like this? I think that might be helpful to direct our conversations and keep us on task. I don't know how people feel about that. Is that a resource that's available to us, Travis?
So at this moment, there is no specific funding source that was tied to the article. I think, you know, we can look at a variety of different things. One, you know, the group right now has no chair, and that's why I'm here, and those types of things. In terms of actual support services, right, at any given time, once we move this forward, and the way that I read the article from earlier is that, you know, putting something forward in front of May 2022 town meeting is kind of the timeline that we're going for. And that might be essentially a time in which to ask for funding. If the group feels that getting to May town meeting without support services is not going to be an option, I think we're going to have to discuss that. At the moment, there is no specific funding source for this group. The idea would be the May would be the timeline in which that may be requested.
Are the funding resources that you sent around the other day from the stimulus available for an activity like this?
Yeah, so actually, you know, I don't want to give anybody, any groups ideas away of their, but we have solicited requests from all groups, all departments, boards, committees, and organizations in town that have ARPA eligible requests. We could certainly look at, you know, there is a planning element, right? So we had the CARES Act first that kind of got us through COVID, cleaning and making buildings safe. And the ARPA is certainly more about economic development. How do we spring forward from the COVID pandemic? And so certainly we could look at that as a potential way, certainly to maybe, you know, in the short term, get us to an article that might be more focused on a master plan. I think that's a viable option to look at.
It's just a suggestion. I don't know what the group thinks.
Stacey's raising her hand.
So Brian, I agree with you. I think this is a big task, and it would be great to have a facilitator, someone who does this in their professional life, if you will. Mary, didn't you ask though people? Wasn't there someone? Did Laura McGann say she did this?
Yeah, unfortunately, she got a new job. So not very long either. So, you know, I guess I don't want to participate in this part of the discussion. This is something the committee really needs to do itself. If the committee feels that it needs some outside support, I'm happy to be the one to go, you know, chasing money and doing applications or whatever it's going to take. I guess the way that I envisioned it was collect the first thing they're going to tell you to do, based on my own professional experience, okay, having done this with communities, is the first thing we would say to you is, you got to go through what you've already got. That's the first thing. You got to know already what the footprint is right now. What are the conditions right now? You've got a bunch of demographics you got to collect. You need to understand who lives in your community. You know, it's just really exercise kind of thing. So in my view, the committee needs to be familiar with what the original or the previous master plan was. You need to understand what the economic development plan was. All of those things, and that's why I put together the list of all of the plans and studies, and as Travis said, they have even more that, you know, newer that I don't have. So if you read all of those things, and what I would suggest is you divide them up. Not everybody reads all of them, but you divide them up and report back to the committee. And then Travis mentioned Pat Boyd. She's willing to take that information and put it into a format in a database so that you can start to see where there are linkages and things that tie together by theme. And that is one of the things that, for example, I'm going to say sustainability isn't something that stands by itself. Sustainability is something that goes very broadly across everything. Diversity goes across everything. Okay, so there are some subjects, some values, I don't know what I should call them, that affect everything. Those are the things you're trying to pull out. I mean, those are the things, maybe we who have been active in town government care about sustainability. Does the town really? Do the townspeople really care? Do you know? I mean, are they happy with the recycling program? Are they really so supportive that they're out there hitting 100% with recycling? Or are they only 50-50? You know, so we have in our minds a whole lot of things that we think are true, but they're perhaps only true for the little corner we live in. I am not convinced that we really have a complete understanding of who lives here now.
We will have, you know, coming up in this time period that this group is sort of coming into is going to be the 2020 census, right? There's going to be some demographic data, the breakdown, you know, for some of the things that Stacey mentioned on affordability and the things that sort of constrain us on an annual basis through budgets. You know, we see we can certainly look at the breakdown over time of residential, commercial, industrial, all that information, right? It can be compiled at the same point. To Brian's point of how we're going to group, I think, you know, part of this is not every conversation needs to be 16 people all together talking, and it can be subgroups, right? It can be, we can start to subdivide. None of those things I think we're going to do this evening, but I think it might be one way to approach it. I will just use that as an opportunity just to switch gears slightly to from the vision statement conversation, which I think we've hit that one. But the existing studies, plans, and reports, I think the list that I sent out to you primarily was to say, is there anything else? Is there anything I'm missing here? And then with that, if not, my next step, quite honestly, is going to be to give each one a report number and put them all out on a Google Drive so that you can look at them all. Some of them I do need to still scan. You know, they're sizable and they're old in some instances, but I think we can get there. To the point where we have them all digitized, you have access to all of them, and we can start to fill in holes. And then, you know, that might be another sort of next step that I can do. And then, you know, we can again determine, you know, if what we really need is to see 2020 census data before we can, you know, reach any kind of what is the current vision based on sort of the demographics that we need to do one piece of a vision. That's fine, and we may have to wait on a couple components. But let me just pull up that. sheet, and it's actually been updated since this point because I was working with Robert yesterday on it. So the idea would be that each of these will get the sort of itemized number. A good deal of them are already digitized, and I will create a Google Drive that you will all have access to, which would then follow the itemized number list. At the same point, right, so we have some relatively new ones. The Parks Master Plan was done relatively recently by Beals and Thomas. I think this does not include, if I remember correctly, what came out of what was included a pretty widespread survey for the library in terms of what people are looking for from that structure. And so some of those things, would be adding in here. And so I think that that's kind of the next step that I can do for the group and with staff resources of what we have. But again, that we are going to need a little bit of organization so as not to have everybody, doing the same thing. So at that point, did people have a chance to look at that list? Did anybody identify anything that they felt was missing, could be added, would benefit the group to have access to when it comes to existing studies, plans, and reports? Brian?
I know that Karen Sherman's working on a new housing production plan that we were waiting for the 2020 census to happen. So I think she's going to hire somebody to do that. I don't think it'll probably be done sometime in this next 6 months, I would imagine, but that will be forthcoming. That will have all of the baseline, population, demographic, housing data, and information, but our 2010 plan that we did has a lot of that in there too. But, the town's a different place now with the way that housing prices have gone up and so forth. So it's timely to do a new plan.
I will look at the housing plan. Sue?
I actually had a question. Are we to assume that if the plans are scanned and in the Google Drive, I know the studies are a little different, but that they've been accepted by the boards that have put them there? So, for example, I know with the recent park master plan, it wasn't at the level that we were hoping to get it. And so I didn't know, obviously we got what we got, but I don't know if that was solidified by the planning board and they're behind it, or would they have made adjustments and have different visions? Or are we just to assume that that's the vision that they're sort of adhering to?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Just because a plan was created, is it something that we actually want to follow? I think that quite honestly is something this group could do relatively easily, right? And determine some of these things. The answer may be it is no longer viable to use as a plan based not on the quality of the work necessarily, but just based on time that has passed.
Yep.
And we can kind of check off and itemize sort of what is the most useful, that what do you guys want to use as the basis moving forward, get rid of any of the riffraff and focus on what you have, and then sort of see where we're missing the most. And that might be the answer, is that to fill in those holes, we absolutely need professional help, or it might be we absolutely need a survey in X, Y, or Z area. Specific to the Parks Commission question, I mean, just because Steve's here, I would say, if there is a plan, is there some way for us to kind of go to those groups, the park, just as an example, not to call out the park specifically, but to say, is this something that you'd like the group to consider, as it's moving forward? Does that seem reasonable, Steve?
Sure.
Yeah, it's Steve, not to answer for you on that one, but just in general, I think it would be helpful for us as we go in to read these to know that before we read them, just because it will give us a baseline.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think, part of that too, and I think part of the frustration, right, that I've heard since I've been in town, and that speaks to the need and the, sort of the enthusiasm for this idea, is that, we have plans. Are we following them? To Ken's earlier point on how often do we check in with these things to gauge ourselves against them. But then, just because a plan was created doesn't mean that, everybody is still swimming in that direction. Okay, so that will be my next step on those. I think I'll be able to get digitized versions. I think we can, once it's in that format and listed out, be able to sort of check in with any group that generated it originally and ask them if they consider it sort of viable towards their personal mission and that this group should be considering. Cross off the ones that we don't think are reasonable to use, and then regroup on sort of what we're missing. Is there anything else on reviewing existing studies or the vision statement that people have this evening?
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
In going through the plans, it may be that we'll find things that today's representatives on these boards and committees don't agree with or don't use or don't follow or never take into account or whatever. That doesn't mean that those thoughts and ideas from 5 years ago don't have value. Particularly if the townspeople, and that's where we really have to spend, at least it seems to me, most of the time has to be spent asking the townspeople what they feel about the different things that come up in these plans and in all of this information that we have. What does the town think? It's not really about what, this group or any group of people, one group of people. The biggest thing is about the outreach and communication. And so we're looking for things for them to respond to. So in going through the plans, and I think Sue's absolutely right, there are probably things in here that you don't need to bother reading. Some of them will seem laughable, truly. But if we can, if Pat is able to then come out with the general ideas that exist, we'll see where they keep repeating. Those are things we can go back and verify with the community. Those are things that you go back and just ask. And that's the one place I don't intend to attend all these meetings, and I don't want to be the one that's pushing you or whatever. I really want to just make sure that the townspeople are the ones that respond and that we really hear back from them. My biggest fear is that there is a gap between what elected officials want and think and what the people want and think.
Oh, Bob, physical and metaphorical hand raised.
I would emphatically echo what Mary is saying. I suspect all of us have had experiences where we've developed plans or visions that we have presented to boards or to groups because they were our own individual ideas, and it was 180 degrees from what the group was expecting the direction we would proceed in. So I think that the idea is that we can develop certainly individually and collectively a vision for what we think about the town, but we really need to make sure that that's endorsed as the proper direction by everybody in town.
Great. Stacey?
But therein lies the big challenge for us, and I struggle with this. How do you ensure that that we're hearing what the town people want? Communication, and this was talked about the other night at the select board meeting. This happens with the school committee meeting. We think we're communicating. We've done it via email, social media, snail mail, and yet you still hear, I didn't know about that. I didn't respond. There's a survey out there right now. There's 15,000 residents. We've had 500 respondents. That's pretty good. But for me, that is a big challenge. And so the challenge that I see is, are we asking the right questions? Are we asking them in the right way? And how do we know that we're getting the responses? So I guess, and I don't mean that as a Debbie Downer statement, but communication is a big challenge.
Right. And so to Brian's earlier point, there are ways to do surveying where you engage somebody and they do it. And there are ways where, we do these surveying internally. Even the simple technology that those groups now use, we have access to, right? We can create a QR code that can go on a physical mailing out to residents that can also link to the same mailing that you get through the town website that you get through Facebook. But, I think we have multiple examples in the last 3 years in which we have surveyed and got drastically different numbers of responses. And I think the other thing that I think you alluded to originally was, and I think anybody who's been through these surveys, whether they're privately done, internally done, it is how you ask a question that is going to drive some of the responses. And sometimes you'll get feedback that people don't like the way that you ask the question. For example, on the one for 260 Woodland, I specifically asked the question, I'm not looking for somebody to commit to spending money on a project. Would you be in support of doing X, Y, or Z within reason was the statement. Anybody could have a problem with that statement, but it was more just to, so my point only is that, if you're going to do it surveying internally, there's a lot that goes into the way that you ask the questions, the information that you're looking for. And then, I think in terms of how to get the best outreach, I share your concern over how to reach the population, but I think internally or engaging a third party to do surveying, I think we can get a lot of responses. I think it's getting to what specifically you need from the community, all of you being in agreement of how that's going to look. And then we can talk about that. I think to Brian's point, I think it's something that could be funded potentially through ARPA. If we didn't think we could do it internally, I think we probably could, quite honestly. But it really, again, once it's too large of a survey too, you're losing people because of the time commitment. So.
But we could break it down into sub surveys too, and make them smaller and quicker and easier.
Absolutely.
The one area that I would like to help your committee is in this, trying to get the word out and the communication. I view it, frankly, as a campaign, and it's a campaign. It's a party. I want this to be a party. I really do. To me, getting people to go to their neighbors is just as important as surveys. Trying to find folks that are not of like mind in, how I look at government, but who are of like mind that they want to be a part of it and so forth. I just think that's essential. And I'm willing to and I have a few people that are similarly interested only in that part of it. Not that they want to be the decision makers about what the answers are, but rather that they want the people to be involved in it. So if it means that we stand downtown with clipboards and we do surveys, if it means that we have coffee parties, if it means we have wine and cheese parties, I'll pay for my own to have them. It's just whatever it takes to get people and to at least respond enough to give you the information to know what the community is really thinking and feeling.
And I do have, I have examples within the last 5 years of the type of surveying that's been done in a past community that I worked for that was done by a third party. Again, a lot of blowback on, you asked me this, why didn't you ask me this? That's just the reality of surveying. But at the same point, you can kind of see what's out there. So I can also put together some of that information for the group to look at and, for you all to consider and have a conversation at either the next meeting or the meeting after that in terms of what, how you think that could go. Obviously, Mary just threw out some other examples of how to get people engaged. Bob and Mary's hands are up.
No, mine is not supposed to be.
Okay. All right. So I think there's been some people who haven't added anything. I just want to give everybody the opportunity before we go past the existing studies vision statement. If there's anything else on those two. Okay. So itemizing goals and objectives, I think we just kind of got into that a little bit too, which is, I think we're all kind of feeling like, all right, this is a lot. Where are we going next? And again, I don't envision myself as your chair forever. So I would say that the next thing that I intend to do based on this conversation is finalize the list, the actual plans all together for you all to look at in a list that you can kind of look through. And, we can start to check off the ones that we think are the most relevant. I think what I heard from the group too is don't discard anything. There may be value there, but, I think we can also sort of make sure that we understand the ones that have the most relevant information that we think at the moment, and see what else we can pull from the other ones to make sure that we're getting all that value. So I can do that. And, I think one of the things too that I'll try to add to that list is kind of the things that we know are coming next, right? The 2020 census is going to be a big pivot for this group. I think, to Brian's point, I had worked with Karen on a one-stop application on a housing study, and there's another one in the works. So, the things that we know are coming, we have some infrastructure studies going on. I can list those as well. That'll be giving information that'll be helpful to the group. Walkability is one that we're waiting for the results from the Stantec study that have been approved by a town meeting, right? If walkability is something that's going to be part of a vision, you're going to have access to that relatively shortly. So I'll list out the ones I know are coming as well and get that out, and then get a Google Drive that you'll all have access to before your next meeting. Is there any other goal and objective right now that we see needing to be laid out before the next meeting? Okay. And with that, I don't think necessarily moving to committee organization that, I would not ask that somebody take chair right now if we didn't think it was necessary. But at some point, I think, what the group is going to need is somebody to organize. And like I think we discussed earlier, it might be that some of these topics get broken off into subgroups. At the moment, for open meeting law, when we post these meetings for all the 16 current members, that will be an issue that we'll have to discuss depending on how subcommittees, if the group goes that direction, will want to go. I'll just come back to one last topic, and we don't need to have a final answer tonight, but again, the language that created this group has a 17 seat, which is DPW. There's obviously nobody here who is employed by the town as a member of this group. And so to put somebody from the actual DPW on here is not the right fit, in my opinion. And so is it the opinion of the group that we should try to identify the proper public works mindset to sit on the group, or should we move ahead with 16, I think is another, I know it's sort of a weird question, but it's just something that I think we got to figure out here. Anybody have an opinion on seating the 17th DPW seat or moving ahead with 16? Stacey?
I recommend that we go ahead with the 16. I think there's representation, if you will, with the select board, with Ben here in terms of their goals and, what would stop Ben from having a conversation with people on the DPW. So I do think that if there's not an elected board, which there's not, I think we should go ahead with the 16.
Okay. The former water board was actually absorbed under the select board. Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to second what Stacey said, and there's nothing that prevents us from inviting representatives of town departments from coming and speaking to us. So if we're not going to have one town department on, we shouldn't have any of them, I don't think.
Great. Okay. Anybody a differing opinion, or? All right. You are a 16-member group. With that, sorry, go ahead.
And Travis, I want to also, I would recommend, I do think that the group needs to organize by the next meeting. I think it's unfair, for lack of a better term, that you should sort of chair this for the next couple of meetings. Like, I think we need to jump in and get working because, you have a job that you're being paid and expected to do, and, this is not.
Oh, you muted yourself towards the end there, but.
Sorry. Yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah. No, and I won't put anybody on the spot. I think if people are starting to think that this is something they have the time to do, and they're sort of seeing this through the first meeting, which we're now in the past the first hour, so I'll cut this quickly. But I think if there's people here who think they have the time and they understand and they kind of see a vision of how this is going to work, you certainly make yourself known to the group, or you can sort of go through me, and we'll look at another meeting. I saw Steve nodding. Was there anybody else who had a sort of opinion on that?
Well, Travis, I think we have a very heavy lift for looking out to April, and we're, sort of mid-July at this point. And so can we at least talk about, and I would agree with you, Stacey, I think we should organize by the next meeting. Can we just talk about logistics and how often we sort of think as at least the 16 of us would meet, and what that's going to look like, just and expectations on, is it an hour meeting, an hour and a half, just again, just so we can sort of plan.
Sure. So I think I started off by saying Matt Lavinsky has made it known that Wednesday night's not his night. I told him, we'll figure out what everybody's sort of night is, and then determine. It might be that we can't find something that works for everybody. It is a large group. So yeah, with that, I think I think you're right, getting going. I can certainly turn around by the end of this week what I think is, getting you all access to these plans, so we can start to make progress on that step. Is there a time that, obviously during the summer, but if there's certainly going to be another meeting before Labor Day, is there a time period that people are seeing here?
Are we meeting by Zoom or are we meeting live? Because that is somewhat dependent too.
Right. So I chose Zoom so I could come and have dinner first before doing it. But I understand perfectly. You are all welcome to if what the group is going to want to do is meet in person. I think for this size, the select board room might even be a little small. But Upper Town Hall is got new floors. So I think if the group wants to meet in person as well, I mean, some of these things we can print out or have the hard copies for rather than looking at them on the computer with some of these plans. So a couple questions. When's the next time people are looking to get going? I mean, I want to capitalize on enthusiasm. And two, in person or remote. And then I think we got to pick a day that we can kind of have as consistent. We know that Wednesday is a problem for one member.
I can, so my Wednesday 6 to 7:30 is my class, so I apologize if that's the conflict, but 7:30 on. So if you wanted to stick with Wednesday nights and suppose to 7 and move it to 7:30, I can jump on this after my class. So that's my only conflict. Rest of the week is wide open.
I should also say I chose Wednesday because I have select board and FinCom on Monday and Tuesday. So it was completely random by your chair, who won't be your chair forever. So certainly don't use that as a stick that you all have to measure off of. Anybody thoughts on scheduling that knows they have specific issues to work around here?
Well, I have in the fall. I have Monday. I have a MBA class on Monday, so I can't do that.
Okay, I saw Frank.
Can I make a suggestion that maybe we send out like a Google form and everybody kind of say what they're going to say on it, and then we can look at what matches up rather than this?
I will do
that.
That's
probably an excellent idea.
Yeah, good job.
I will do, it'll probably be a doodle if people are comfortable with that.
Yep.
I'll do a scheduling. But are people generally in agreement that this group does not want to wait until after kind of Labor Day, that time to kind of get going in earnest here? People are ready to go now?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
And then with that, right, in the summer, does that mean that Zoom is the right mode for the time being with
Yes.
maybe in person after Labor Day? Does that? All right. A lot of head nods. All right, so
Yeah.
I will do a scheduling doodle survey, the first survey, and get a time for you all to meet, and I will be with you at that point, which hopefully, we may be able to organize for that next meeting. And then between now and then, I will get out to you all access to the Google Drive with everything itemized that we have, and the next agenda we'll probably get right into diving into, reviewing what we have and a reorganization and allowing the group to go off from there. I don't have anything under other business, but it was really just to make sure that at the end here we have a catch-all. Everybody's comfortable with where we are. I apologize if it's a little haphazard in the beginning, but we've just organized a 16-member group. So, I hope it was everybody's comfortable. Any questions, anything that people have for the group? Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick question. Is this this is going to be available on HCAT, or where will the video of these meetings be available?
So this is live on HCAT. I don't know if it's live. It will be on HCAT tomorrow. In general, when we do Zoom, we will always make them accessible the next day. If you go to your webpage for the clerk committee, you will be able to find the either audio or audio and video.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Ben, go ahead.
Just two quick things. The first is I wanted to say thank you to Mary for putting this together. I think this is long overdue, and I think I appreciate you doing the hard work for a town meeting to get this put together. And also a big thank you to Travis, because this is like the ultimate in herding cats. So I appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Bob, is this a new comment? No. Okay. All right. Karen Langdon, that's not a hand, it's a clap. Okay. All right. I appreciate it, everybody. I apologize for taking over an hour of your time tonight, but obviously we're getting going here. So I will be reaching out by email with all this information. And, at the next group too, we can decide what we think is one online, that represents anybody who comes and sees your group, and work on the webpage as well. So with that, I appreciate it. We are unfortunately going to have to adjourn with a roll call of 16. And so I will need a motion to adjourn in a second before I go into roll call.
Moved by Stacey Raffi.
Second.
Seconded.
All right. A lot of people seconding, so that's good. Karen Langdon.
Aye.
Ben Sparrow.
Aye.
Ben Sparrow. Aye. Brian Clancy.
Aye.
Bob Malone.
Aye.
Sooner Sessian.
Aye.
Frank Chamberlain.
Aye.
Lixie Carey was not with us. I will follow up. Rich Rosenberry.
Aye.
Anne Marie Pilch.
Aye.
Steve Biglow.
Aye.
Ken Henderson, who told us he would drop off. Matt Lavinsky.
Aye.
Stacey Raffi.
Aye.
Glenn Brown.
Aye.
Nancy Barron.
Aye.
Thank you all. And again, if you choose to meet in person in the future, we don't have to do that. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
Bye.
The recording has stopped.